The investment momentum in Indian startups has rocketed over the past few years. So have the brute spends on marketing and promotional activities. This report by Ruhi Kureli attempts to find out if high ad spends are the only way to promote a brand and gain respectability. Have a dekho.
In the dot-com boom of the late 1990s, we saw a sea change in the way some businesses promoted themselves.
Shop away. No conditions, no asterisks.
We've been seeing this happen in the last 3 years with e-commerce players.
The big sale at Myntra for those who love shopping.
The investment momentum in Indian startups have seen an upsurge in the recent years. So have the huge spends on marketing and promotional activities, largely through big ad spends and discounted sales. E-commerce became the second largest category in advertising in 2015 as per the Pitch Madison report published this year. While the FMCG sector dominates ad spends, e-commerce comes second at 10%. Of the 43,991 crore aggregate spends in 2015, e-commerce contributed to 4,231 crore, growing 23% over what was spent the previous year.
Starting at just $9.99.
The only reason the customer is there because of discount, which means the only reason you get the customer back is through another discount. In that case, the brand is not being built, and that money, I think, is being wasted.
Marketing is only essential for starters for two reasons. One, creating a consumer brand, and second, for enabling trials. Whatever sales you're talking about is for generating more trials, that is, come in and try us for the first time. If the customer's experience is good, the startups will become sustainable companies because the customer will come back because of the quality of experience. And if the experience is not good, no matter how much you keep shouting, the word will spread and enough people will not go out and transact with you. So I think for us and for e-commerce companies, the nature should be focus on building quality of experience. Once that is built, go and introduce trials, and hopefully with those trials you would get a large customer base which will become loyal with you because of the quality of service.
There are strong charges against startups that rely way too much on the incentivizing model to increase customer base, focusing on quality and bettering their services.
Most of these e-commerce firms aren't building brands. Just because they've got some sales does not mean that people love the place they bought it from. I guess the analogy is that you were in a strange city and you happen to enter a shop and buy something from it. Does not mean that you're loyal to that shop or that you've got a brand for that shop. That the shop is a brand in your mind. And so that's really what's happening. So in many ways they're wasting their money, but so long as they're wasting it through us, it's good, I guess.
Discounts and promotions, they work as long as you're working towards activation and retention of the customers, and it's very targeted, so you're not wasting money on people.
In their quest to be on the top, we've seen many promising startups shutting operations. The losses of the Indian e-commerce startups grew to 293% in FY15. While we still don't have recent numbers, one sector that's facing rough weather is food tech.
शैम्पू और डिटर्जेंट भी कहा था।
डाउनलोड करो PepperTap app.
Grocery service PepperTap shut shop in April, and unicorn Zomato saw a controversial 50% cut in billion-dollar valuation by analysts at HSBC Securities and Capital Markets. Zomato has of course disputed this.
Order online.
Currently, a lot of the activity that you see is balance sheet activity, meaning it is funded by balance sheets rather than by profit and loss accounts. I mean, they're not earnings, but they are large scale investments that are trying to move valuations. So when you have those kind of calculations, then what happens is that the market is not operating in a realistic sense. It is operating with highly inflated and benchmarks that do not correspond with returns. It becomes a little unstable when you have these kind of monies being spent, which would not be justified in most normal businesses. You are spending those levels of money, and I think you lose a sense of reality, and that's what is happening.
The shouting is being done because People don't have the patience to build brands. Unfortunately, brand building is a slow process. It is a building. It's an agricultural process, if you like. You know, you have to grow things. You grow brands. You don't actually hunt brands. Whereas I think the VC mentality or this whole get rich quick mentality is a hunting mentality. You want to do it overnight, tomorrow morning. And that's a problem.
अब ये क्या नया शुरू किया है? कुछ अच्छा ही शुरू किया है.
There seems to be no stop to these high spends on advertising and promotions. According to the Pitch Madison report, in print, the growth of e-commerce spends in 2015 over 2014 was as high as 120%. And in television, it grew 60%. But are high spends the only way to promote a brand and gain market share?
I love to flirt.
High ad spend, especially when the ads are just saying free or just saying discount, etc., is not a good way to build a brand at all. So there are many ways to build a brand. It's got to do with consumer engagement. It is to say, it is to build values that the customer likes. It is to create empathy with the consumer. So there's so many other things. High ad spend is not at all the right thing to do.
If you have something that has power, then automatically, it'll become. In fact, the largest businesses created here are actually Facebook, Google. None of them have been created by advertising.
अमित भाई, बड़ा टीवी.
Startups are of the view that incentivizing does help them create customer loyalty, but their focus has always been on customer experience, and in their initial days it was their innovative way of promotional activities that validated their presence amongst people.
सेल अभी चल रही है ना? Flipkart big shopping days are back. पक्के products पे पक्के offers.
Albeit they might have capital, you are always in scarcity of funds from what you would want, which is why a lot of startups end up raising multiple rounds of capital, right? So you always need to strategize and think innovatively about the way you would use marketing. And if you think about startups in the last couple of years, be it ability of using Rahagiri to the ways of making sure that people actually go and talk to customers by means of BTL activities, people have done all sorts of things.
Those startups may have had their share of failure, and while telecom will also see a sharp growth in 2016 thanks to 4G, according to all forecasts made, thanks to an increased competition and market expansion, e-commerce will continue to see high spends as we've seen in the first 4 months of the year.
To the best gems.
I think very honestly, in the companies or e-commerce brands that you think about it, in the next 3 to 5 years, all of these companies have to exist and become sustainable businesses. They can't be just, going out and burning money, including ours. Which is why, of course, it makes a lot of sense to work in a manner where your quality of product is the reason the customer tries to use you over and over again. But at least in the interim, for the next year, my belief is customers will continue getting very attractive deals, but over time I feel it will move into a sustainable side of business.
Marketing is how well you carry across the message which your product needs to, how the value is delivered to the customer, right? So a lot of, like a product like ours, like Jugnu, the value which we are giving to the customer is more or less evident. We are bringing convenience at a lower price. What we only need to do is we have to get across this message to the maximum number of users as possible. So I would say that it's not about money, it's more about strategy and how well your product value is can be communicated to the customer.
But is all these hyperactivity boring? Many believe the brute spending power that many startups have, thanks to easy availability of funds, eclipses the more process-driven marketing of traditional businesses.
It can also warp and distort priorities for traditional markets because they believe they have to keep pace, and because of the spends of the new players, the traditional players are forced to change their game sometimes, and I think that can be disruptive.
Startups were among the first seed bearers. When startups start marketing, they do not start in advertising with a newspaper or a banner, right? We never had the money when we started to do any of those things. We started with writing updates on Facebook, then eventually using Facebook as a means of advertising. So I also credit these kind of platforms like Facebook and Google to enable the penetration that they have created in India already, right? So a combination of this is the reason why not only startups, of course the largest spends are online, even the traditional companies are spending a lot of time to be able to understand how traditional, non-traditional digital platforms are going to work in the future.
Startups may be much talked about, but the success of traditional businesses does have some marketing lessons for them.
Let's stop for a short break here, but don't be gone for too long. We'll be back soon.